We're going to get started here. I would like to welcome everyone to the Increasing Your Energy and Improving Your Immunity workshop. My name is Nicole Young. I'm going to be moderating this conversation with the brilliant Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh. Avanti is a really well-versed expert in Ayurveda, and she is going to be helping us with our immunity and energy building this morning. Before we get started, I'd like to let everyone know that you can feel free to leave your questions, any comments, any tech support related issues in the chat box. This is a public conversation, so everyone will see what you are sending. We're going to be starting our discussion, and it'll be a 30-minute conversation, and then we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. So please let us know what questions you have, and we will do our best to address them. This conversation will be recorded and it'll be available post-event. And please follow along with us at GlamHive and engage with us socially using the hashtag GlamHive Live. So I'd like to just also give a quick thank you and shout out to our sponsor, Mary Kay. Mary Kay and the Mary Kay Global Design Studio celebrate a world where beauty, fashion, and empowerment are synonymous, which is obviously right in line with everything that we do here at GlamHive. Mary Kay champions creative industries that are diverse, inclusive, and innovative at their core. So we want to just thank them very much for helping make this event possible. And let's get started with our conversation. So I would like to introduce everyone to, as I said, our brilliant Ayurveda expert, Dr. Avanti. Dr. Avanti, I would like for you to describe for everyone a little bit about your expertise and what you do professionally.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here. So a little bit about me. My background is I actually am trained in Western medicine. I went to medical school here in Chicago. I grew up in Chicago, come from a small, tight-knit South Asian family. I'm first generation. My parents immigrated here from India. So I grew up with all of these practices in my home. And then I went on to medical school, did training in emergency medicine, and like many people, got very sick and started looking for answers outside of Western medicine. Although I believe very strongly in Western medicine, I'm a Western trained doctor. I also believe that Western medicine doesn't have all the answers. And so I have really spent the last 10 years of my life doing a lot of self-study, advanced training in Ayurveda, to really try and bridge these two worlds and help people learn how to take healing back into their own hands, because that's what Ayurveda really is about awakening the inner healer, that's the healer that's within you. So that's sort of a little, in a nutshell, my background. That helps.
I would love to also just take this opportunity to wish you a happy, am I pronouncing it correctly, Diwali?
Diwali, yep, it's our
Happy
new year
Diwali to
today.
you.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
you're
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
I think it's interesting that you do have the Western medicine background and training, but then you fuse that with the beliefs and practices of Ayurveda. If you could just kind of break down for us a little bit how you work that into your overall practice and philosophy.
Yeah, so I actually don't practice Western medicine anymore. I've actually switched over and only do Ayurveda exclusively. And I actually spend most of my time now lecturing, teaching, doing workshops. But the way that I integrate the two is really this idea that there are things that we can do every day. My belief is very strong that, health is not found in a doctor's office. I often say this to patients and students and to audiences that, health is not found in the doctor's office, in the therapist's chair, or even in the yoga studio. I mean, those are all facilitators of healing. Really, health is lost and then found in everyday moments of our life, right? And so really, when we're thinking about healing, we have to sort of rewind a little bit and think about what are we doing on a daily basis that is either contributing to health and wellness or contributing to illness and chronic disease, right? So that's sort of the perspective that I come from. And that's how I really try to incorporate the two things together. Yes, going to doctors, going to a hospital, going to a therapist, going to a yoga studio, it's all very, very important, but it's not the only thing. You have to think about what you're doing when you step outside of that yoga studio, when you get out of the therapist's chair, when you leave the doctor's office. What are you doing on a daily basis, right? So that's really how
right.
we bridge them together.
I love what you said earlier, and then sort of tying into what you just said now, that number one, doctors don't have all of the answers. And also, for me, I believe, like what you said, that wellness is a 360, 24/7 approach. If you're trying to achieve a healthy lifestyle, you have to also live a healthy lifestyle. So, would it be correct to say that through Ayurveda, you can hone those skills and sort of figure out how to blend what your goals are with how you live your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ayurveda quite literally means in Sanskrit, the science or knowledge of life. I mean, and it's really a handbook for how to live with optimal health, you know? So I think that, yes, absolutely. It's a framework of sorts. It's not rules, they're guidelines, and there's wisdom that's based on 5,000 years of knowledge, right? I mean, Ayurveda is the oldest healing science that we know of on earth. It's the oldest form of medicine and healing. And actually, every other healing system, including Western medicine and Chinese medicine, come from Ayurveda. They have their roots in Ayurveda. So, Ayurveda is often talked about as the mother of all healing because it contains all those roots, right? And so it has this wisdom within it, which is all about how do you live your life on a daily basis. And they have some very, very basic principles that you can use, again, like you said, as a guideline, as a framework for what you do on a daily basis.
I love the terminology, just even the way you sort of put it all together. It just sounds a lot more really just doable on a basic level, because you said it's not about rules, it's about a framework. Because of course, once you make something a rule, it becomes so much harder sometimes for people to even mentally stick to it. And also, I love your helping us understand that it's a myth to believe that the two don't go together. So the two, I mean, Western medicine with these ancient practices, because Western medicine really comes from those practices.
Correct.
So I love that you point that out. I wanted to find out, you already basically broke down for us what Ayurveda means, but if you could just give me again, sort of just the breakdown of what it means in terms of overall.
Absolutely. So, Ayurveda is, like I said, it's the oldest healing system. It's such a vast body of knowledge that it's actually hard many times to describe what it is in a 10, 15, 30-minute talk. But really, when it comes down to it, if I had to describe, sort of sum up the essence of what Ayurveda is, it really comes down to this basic principle, which is that when you live in harmony with nature, you can have optimal and vibrant health. That's the basic principle that underlines all of the guidelines, the entire framework, all of the practices. The whole philosophy is really that if you live in harmony with nature, both daily, rhythms and routines, seasonal rhythms and routines, if you eat the bounty of nature, and then if you also keep the prana or the life force energy of nature moving through your physical system and your mind and emotions, you can have optimal health. That's really what it comes down to. And the idea is based on this principle that, there are 5 elements, right? We have space, air, fire, water, and earth. Now, for any of you that, have heard or have looked into Chinese medicine, you're going to see some similarities here, right? Chinese medicine is based on 4 elements. In Ayurveda, there are 5. So it's space, air, fire, water, and earth. And the idea here is that everything in the universe, all living beings, plants, animals, human beings, are made of these same 5 elements in different proportions. So from a very philosophical perspective, it's that if we are all made of the same 5 elements, if we live in harmony, because we're connected, right, to everything in nature, if we live in harmony with animals and plants and the seasons, we'll have optimal health because we're in harmony, right? That's sort of the philosophical way of looking at it. The practical way of looking at it is that if you live in harmony with the cycles of nature on a daily basis, on a seasonal basis, you're going to have great health. You're not going to have problems, right? So that's really the basis of Ayurveda.
So when you talk about, thank you for that. When you talk
Sure.
about harmony, um, there's so much, particularly right now, it feels like even more than ever, but there's so much in our lives, I guess, that would disrupt that harmony. So I'd
Mhm.
love for you to talk a little bit about, what are some of the daily things that we do that might, or that definitely disrupt that harmony? And then from there, I'd love to then talk to you about how we can sort of work
Sure.
to eliminate those things. But what
Yeah.
are some of just the daily things that we do
Right.
that we may not even realize are disruptive to the harmony?
Right. So in Ayurveda, there's really three main areas of remedy, as we call it. Okay. Things that will help us bring us back into harmony with nature. And those are routines, which are daily or seasonal. That is the diet, which includes, all of nature's bounty. So the food pharmacy, as I call it, or the spice medicine cabinet. Right. And then the third is what I call the tools of yoga, which includes all of the tools of yoga, not just postures, which is what yoga has become in Western society. That is not what yoga is. I'm also a yoga therapist, so I really harp on this idea because I really want people to understand what yoga really is. It's about meditation, breath work, postures, chanting. It's all of those things are tools. And so I think the best way to explain this, what your question is let me give you my own example, and then people can see what they identify with. So when I got really sick, right, I was in my training, medical school, and then in emergency medicine. Now, as you probably know, emergency medicine doctors work all kinds of crazy shifts. I picked emergency medicine because I love to do procedures and I had a young family. So shift work just seemed to work with my schedule. It actually was the worst thing I could have picked because what happened is that I was completely out of sync with nature, right? I was in the hospital at the weirdest times. I would do a string of night shifts and be up all night. Now, if nature is sleeping at night and you are awake all night, right there, you're completely out of harmony with nature. I would eat on the run. I'd have food in my coat pocket, right? My white coat with like all kinds of random stuff. Like I was eating processed foods most of the time, things from the vending machine, the hospital cafeteria,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't things that were close to what nature had provided. They were completely altered. Now there's no judgment there, but what I'm saying is that the accumulation of all of these different things, right? My routine was completely upside down and not in harmony with nature. The types of foods I was eating were not at all in harmony with nature. I was eating whatever was available in the hospital in a man-made structure, right? Not what was available out on the farm and in nature, right? And quite honestly, I was moving because I was walking around the ER, but beyond that, I wasn't really doing much meditation, stillness. I was like constantly moving, but for my work, not because it was to help move energy through my body. And so, the result of that was I had symptoms that kept showing up, but I ignored them because I was in a rigorous field, and I knew that when I signed up to become a doctor. I knew what I was getting into. So long hours, night shifts, eating on the run, all of that stuff was part of what I had been programmed to think I was supposed to do. And so, I had headaches, I had 30 pounds of weight gain, I had plantar fasciitis in both of my feet. And it was excruciating to stand because I was carrying extra weight and I was on my feet 12-hour shifts a day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I had constipation, all these signs and symptoms that started out kind of small, but because I kept ignoring them, built and built and built and built. And I realized I was completely out of sync with nature when I started going back to really, how did I grow up? What did my grandfather do, who is sort of my biggest inspiration for moving into Ayurveda? And so what I'm saying is that think about your own life. How much are you in sync or out of sync with the daily path of the sun? Right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as when you're waking up and when you're going to sleep, when you're working, when you're eating, think about that, right? The other thing is, what are you eating? Are you eating foods in the middle of the winter just because they're available in the grocery store? Just because we can get mangoes flown in from tropical places in winter doesn't mean we should be eating them in the winter, right? So think
Interesting.
about these small things that seem harmless and actually seem like, oh, eating fruits and vegetables in the middle of winter raw would be so good for you. It's actually not, right? Those are all the little things. Think about, the kind of movement you have. Do you get outside in nature? Do you sit most of the time? And now I'm not talking about it, from a cardiovascular perspective. I'm talking about it from an energetic perspective. Are you moving energy through your body, or is it getting stuck and is it stagnant? Right? So those are kinds of the things to think about, with how our modern life, which is supposed to make it so much more convenient for us to live, is actually hurting us, taken it to an extreme.
I love how you basically took apart the things that we think might be so helpful. And the truth is, a lot of times they're not, because for one, they're not in sync with the path of the sun, as you mentioned, but also just because something sounds like it's great for you doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And you can be stagnant within while moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think we as a society we don't go beneath the first layer sometimes. It's like, oh, yep, I'm going to do that because that sounds right. And they said I should eat fruits and vegetables, so let me eat fruits and vegetables. So it sounds to me like it's also about benefiting from Ayurveda is kind of like just looking a little bit deeper. Is
Mm-hmm.
that an accurate thing to say? Like if we go a little bit deeper into some of the things that we even might think are great, we would find that they may not be.
Yeah, and again, one thing that I always point out is that there's no judgment in Ayurveda. There's no such thing as good and bad, right?
Okay.
It's what I call a no judgment zone, judgment-free zone. The idea here is that different things are good for you, or let's put it this way, health supporting and health weakening. That's actually the way I like to say it, because good and bad has a lot of connotation to it that triggers
Mm-hmm.
people into thinking that they're doing something wrong. It's not that. Is it supporting your health? Or is it weakening your health? And the same
Mm-hmm.
thing that might be supporting your health, Nicole, could be weakening for my health because of what my constitution is, or your constitution is, or what symptoms are showing up, or what part of the world you live in. There's so many considerations there. There are some general principles, but again, there's no judgment, right? And again, I also always think about in Ayurveda, it's never about extremes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about doing things with some balance. And so there's no right or wrong, right? There's no
Okay.
judgment. Yeah.
So I have a question then. What would you suggest for any individual to kind of, how would you recommend we tap into what is, because it sounds like it's also, it's personal, which wellness overall is kind of personal, right? What works for me might not work for you, but specifically when you're trying to figure out what is the best, what is your best path to follow the path of the sun? How would
Right.
you recommend for the average person to kind of be able to tap into that? How do you know what's best for you?
It's a great question. It's a question I get asked all the time. And the best answer I have is you start with routines. You start by looking at what are you doing on a daily basis. And quite literally, you can sit down with a piece of paper and list out everything you're doing from morning until evening. What time are you waking up? What do you do after you wake up? Do you go to the bathroom? Do you go straight to your phone? And again, don't judge yourself, but be really honest. And write down everything you're doing. Write down the times. Did I eat breakfast? Did I eat lunch? What did I eat? When did I work? What kind of meetings did I have at this time? You can get that detailed. So write down what you're doing all day long, and then start to look at, well, all right, how does it line up with the rhythm of the daily cycle of the sun, right? So am I sleeping until 11 o'clock? I'm giving extreme examples right now. Am I sleeping till 11
I'm like, is
o'clock?
11 o'clock extreme? Oh no, kidding.
Sleeping until 11 o'clock in the morning and then going to bed at 12 o'clock at night, right? What's going on in nature? Well, the sun rose at 6 o'clock in the morning and it's set at 7 o'clock in the evening. So why am I awake or asleep when the sun is awake? Do you see what I'm saying? So you start looking
Mm-hmm.
at what's going on in nature. Look at what you're eating. It's the winter time right now. I live in Chicago. And should I be eating lots of raw salads and fruits and vegetables? Probably not, because that's not what is naturally available.
Right.
Like strawberries and blueberries and oranges. That's not what's grown around here in the winter. I should be eating more root vegetables and, heavier foods that have a little more fat content and sugar content, because that's what nature provides at this time. So again, I think that looking at your routines, again, not to go down a rabbit hole, but just look at your routines and start with the three things I always say start with is look at what time are you eating your meals, okay? And what time are you waking up and what time are you sleeping? Start there. That's a really good place to start, because sleep and food, that all provides energy, and sleep and
Absolutely.
in your body 3-4 times a day, and how much you sleep impacts your health in every way. So look at that and then try and see what can you adjust. Again, this is not about saying, okay, I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock every morning. I'm going to go to sleep at, 8 o'clock at night, and I'm going to get, so many hours of sleep, and I'm going to blah, 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 blah. Don't make it so, so difficult. Pick one thing that you want to work on, make it small, make it simple. It's not going to be easy. Simple and easy are not the same thing. And link it to something else you're already doing. So if you want to add 10 minutes of meditation in the morning, right, when you wake up, link it to, okay, right after I brush my teeth, I'm going to sit down and meditate for 10 minutes. Or while I'm making my coffee, I'm going to sit down for 10 minutes. I'm going to meditate while I'm waiting for the coffee to get percolated, right?
Okay.
Link it to something you're already doing. You'll be much more successful.
That makes perfect sense. I just wanted to kind of get that idea out there so that people can figure out, okay, so I understand what I might need to do, but then how do I actually incorporate that into my life? So I appreciate that breakdown. So you actually have 3 biohacks that are based in the theories of the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda that can help us with the increase of energy and improvement of our immune systems. But before we get to them, what exactly is a biohack?
So a biohack is just, I guess sort of a fancy term that people are using in wellness. It gets thrown around a lot right now, which is just basically to say, these are some tips and tricks that you can use to really maximize your health, and to maximize whatever you're doing in a way that it's really going to help support your health, right? So, if you are planning on, probably one biohack a lot of people have heard of is this whole idea of having, going keto, adding more fat to your diet. And one of the biohacks a lot of people will talk about is adding ghee or some kind of oil into your morning coffee, right? The biohack there is that you're already doing something, having coffee every day. If you want to go keto, add this in. It's a hack, right? You something that's in wellness that's being shown to be beneficial for people. And you're making it simpler for yourself. It's like a shortcut in other words, kind of.
Just wanted to get the sense of what that meant. So now I would love to hear, I know you have 3 specific biohacks that people can use to, as I said, improve our immune systems and also increase our energy levels. So you have 3. I would love to break down the first one with you.
So the first one is really is the idea of following the path of the sun. So again, the sun rises and sets every day. So right there, that's something that's already happening. The way that you can biohack into that is think about how does your waking and sleeping time combine or coordinate with the path of the sun. So that's the first thing. So right there, you have a guide. And basically you have to wake up every day. You got to go to sleep every day. So let's hack into it and let's make it more effective. I can't get into all the reasons why that is so effective, but there's a lot of things about energy and our circadian rhythm that actually physiologically plays into this also. If we had more time, I would talk about that, but that's why it's a biohack, because you're actually hacking into physiology that we already know of. But just use this as the biohack is look at the path of the sun outside. Try and match up the time that you're waking up close to the time that the sun rises. It doesn't have to be at exactly sunrise, but the point is that if the sun is rising at 5:30 or 6, try and start adjusting your wake time to that time. We're in the winter, the sun is setting a lot earlier with daylight savings. That doesn't mean you're going to bed at 5 o'clock in the evening, but that means that you're thinking about slowing down, decompressing. You're not going to exercise at night. You're not going to be on the computer, revving up your brain, right? At night. The whole idea is that the sun is going to sleep. you should be getting ready to go to sleep as well. Right. So though that's really the hack there, is to look at where's the sun in the sky and try and sync up. Just start with sleep and wake times. Okay.
So I have a question. So if somebody, for example, had a schedule that was more of a nocturnal schedule. So for example, when you were working in the emergency room, your schedule was probably flipped upside down sometimes. So what would you recommend for somebody who has more of a nocturnal schedule to be able to use that hack, or would they not, or would that hack not necessarily fit into their lifestyle?
So, this is not again, this is a framework, and it's not about blowing up your life and saying I should have a different job. But if you're having major health issues, honestly, if you're having very severe health issues, you need to look at that. Because if you're working a night shift and you're having all kinds of problems health-wise that is really taking from the quality of your life, it's time to consider, how is that affecting me? But short of that, obviously you do the best that you can to adjust to that. That's one of those situations that maybe, sleep and wake is not the one that you start with. It might be one of these other ones that we're going to talk about.
Right. Well, that's why we have more than one. And as you said, it's a judgment-free philosophy. So if that doesn't work for you, it's not like, oh, no, I can't reap the benefits of the philosophy. Okay, so your second one revolves around the principle of Ayurvedic eating, which you kind of broke down a little bit before, but I would love to get a little bit deeper into that and get your sense of how it benefits our overall health.
So again, because of time, I'm looking at the clock, so I'm gonna sum it up a little bit more. This is really the idea that, what you eat is not always the most important thing. We're very obsessed with that in this country. Yes, it's important, but it's not the most important thing. There are other factors of why are you eating, where are you eating, when are you eating, how much are you eating at different times of the day. Those are all things to think about. But for our discussion, I think the most important thing to think about is eating seasonally. I can't stress that enough, right? Eating seasonally as much as possible, right? And eating things that are as close to their natural form as possible. Again, there's no judgment here. Whatever you can do, whatever your budget allows, whatever your lifestyle allows, but try and add more things that are seasonal and as close to their natural form that nature provided as possible. And right now, as we're going into winter in the United States and different varying degrees, depending on where you live, think about, really eating warm cooked foods, because those are actually better for our system to digest in the winter. So that is going to help you a lot with your energy level and also with boosting your immunity. So really think about seasonal eating.
That is a great, great tip. And so
a little tip on that, the way to figure out what's seasonal is whatever's cheapest in the grocery store in the fruits and vegetable section is usually what's in season. There's a reason strawberries are really expensive in the winter and a lot cheaper in the summer, right? So
it's about seasonal, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm getting the sense it's also probably about local too, because if something that's coming from, if something's not seasonal, but it's at the market, it's more expensive because it's coming from somewhere further away than where you live.
Yep, that's you've got the point exactly. Yeah.
I love that tip. That's a great tip that anybody can really practically implement. Look for what is seasonal. So number 3, your final biohack is breath is the link. So I'd love to have you break that down. What does that mean?
So really, breath is the key. It's the link between the body and the mind. It's what connects those two in the sense of the nervous system, right? We all know that if we're really, really stressed out, we start breathing quicker. We might even hold our breath and our heart rate goes up, our respiratory rate goes up, our vessels dilate. I mean, that's all the physiology of the stress response. If we can slow down our breath, everything physiologically starts to settle as well. So the point here is that if the nervous system can affect the breath, right, depending on if we're in a stressed state or a relaxed state, the opposite is also true. So if we can learn how to tap into the power of our breath, we can alter our physiology. And that's where all the studies come from, that breath work is actually, along with meditation, can change what's happening inside of your body. And you can actually start to reverse so many symptoms, so many chronic illnesses by starting to work with the breath, right? You're moving that life force energy through you, but you're also changing the physiology of your body and your mind, quite literally. So, really it's about learning how to breathe, and just becoming aware of your breath is the first step. Noticing that when I'm stressed, I hold my breath or I breathe really rapidly, and taking notice of that and just trying to slow down the breath. When you're starting to do that, it will start to change your physiology. So that's like a really simple thing to think about. And that's something you can do anytime, anywhere, right? You can change your breath pattern anywhere. So for so many of us who are in an anxious state right now with the way the world is and the pandemic and all of the political stuff going on all over the world, I have so many people who are very anxious. So really tap into the exhale part of the breath. That is actually relaxing. So what you want to do is just basically lengthen your exhale however you can, whether it's counting, linking it to some kind of movement or to some kind of sound. You can lengthen your breath, your exhale, and that will help calm you down. So that would be the biohack I have.
I had a yoga instructor once who said that lengthening the exhale is pushing more and more toxins out of your body. Is that accurate to say? Is
Yeah,
that sort of
that's a way of thinking about it for sure. I mean, there's a lot of physiological stuff going on, but absolutely, you can think about it that way, that you can even imagine that. That's a great way to actually link your breath to something. Imagine, picture the toxins, whatever you don't need, you're just pushing it out of your body. You'll naturally say, okay, I'm gonna exhale as much as I can, right? So right there, you've figured out a way to get yourself to slow your breath down. Absolutely.
got it? If you're in public, keep your mask on though with your exhaling, and you're inhaling, don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, it's, I think it's important what you're saying basically is to know and to get more familiar with the fact that we can do things to heal our own bodies, from the inside out, really, through principles such as Ayurveda.
Absolutely. I strongly believe in it. I've experienced it my whole life. I've experienced it before I started my medical training and after my medical training. And I know what the power is of these principles in Ayurveda. And they're very simple. They're not complicated. They're really not complicated. Once you understand the basic framework, it actually becomes very intuitive. And that's really sort of what my perspective is that I want to teach people how to learn these basic principles and then apply them in their everyday life. It becomes intuitive. You tap into this inner knowing that you already have. In the winter, does it feel good to eat cold vegetables or raw salads? Most
Not
people,
really.
I've asked this question many times. 99% of people will say, yeah, I don't like doing that. So why do you do it then? Right? We already know this. So cook your salad if you need to, warm it up a little bit. You get the benefits and it's actually more soothing for your whole body, right? That's just one small example, but this knowledge is inside of us already. All I'm doing is helping to spark it, to catalyze that knowledge, right? I'm sort of putting a spark like a sparkler, and asking you to remember what you already know.
In times like these, we need as much of a spark as we can get. Thank you so much, Avanti. So now I think we should open this up, to Q&A. If anyone has any questions, it would be great for us to be able to address them. So do you see any questions coming up, Avanti, on your side? Because I think
I
you
don't
have
have
the,
access to
okay,
chat.
hold on one second here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, well, in the meantime, we can, oh, here I am. Okay. In the meantime, we can discuss a little bit more. We have a few more minutes.
You know what? Actually, here, wait a
Oh,
second. I
here
see
we
a
go.
question
Oh,
box.
yes, I see one. We have a question about workouts. Oh, actually, does a person need to, okay, two questions. So one is, what type of workout would you recommend during the winter time?
So that's a little bit of a difficult question without knowing sort of what's going on for you. generally, I think the most important thing, let's make it specific to this winter with what's going on in the world. I think the most important thing is to make sure you have energy flowing through you, right? So if that means it's cardiovascular, like getting out for a run or for a walk, outside in nature to get that movement of the air through you, that's great. If it's doing yoga and making sure that you add a breath practice, that's great too. I don't think that there's any right or wrong. Again, because we're not able to do a lot of the things that we normally do. We're in our houses a lot. So I think just adjusting and whatever you can do. But I think the idea of a workout, it's more important to get the energy flowing through your body.
Great answer. I think that, like you said, it's not so much about the specifics of the exercise, but it's about getting the movement going and having the energy flow through your body. Correct? Would you say that?
Absolutely.
Great. So we have another question. This question is, does a person need 3 meals a day, or is 2 enough? Or do we need to snack? And what are your suggestions and your thoughts as well on energy drinks?
Okay, so let's start with the snacks. In Ayurveda, we believe that you should eat only 3 times a day. There needs to be at least 4 to 5 hours between meals, and that's because of the way our digestion works. Again, I can't answer the question fully enough, but I'm just going to give you that answer. And do you have to have breakfast? No. There's a lot of people for which breakfast is not the best thing. Think about it this way. Your digestive system is like a fire within your belly. It's like a stove. You turn it on in the morning, like a coal, like an old coal stove, burning stove. It takes time for that to get hot. It's the same thing with us. It's our digestion needs a couple of hours to increase it. It goes with the path of the sun. So in the morning, our digestion is not very strong. For some people, based on what's going on with them, they just can't eat in the morning. And it actually causes more health issues. The main point here is that your largest, most complex or difficult to digest meal should be in the middle of the day between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. If you notice, that's also the time that the sun is at its highest point in the sky. So again, you're looking at it as the biohack here is that you're linking up to what the path of the sun is. So that's my short answer. Snacking is not something we talk about in Ayurveda, but again, it's individual depending on what health issues you have. So I don't make that an absolute ever.
Okay.
And some energy drinks, I'm not a big proponent.
Yes.
Not a big proponent because there's a lot of, again, there's no judgment, but again, you want to have things that are closest to the form of nature. So for energy, if you're going to use like teas, that's great. Even coffee is fine, not to an extreme, but I don't know that I don't believe in anything that's processed or, made in a lab and said that it's going to be an energy drink. So.
Well, considering you're giving us tips to try to build up our energy naturally, the hope is that we won't feel like we need those energy drinks at a certain point anyway. So another question that we got, actually 2 people asked a similar question. They're looking for book or website suggestions from you where they can get more information about Ayurveda and the practices.
Sure. Well, what a great question. I have a website. It's my full name, avantikumarsingh.com. There's lots of information. And I actually just wrote a book, which is this book. It's called The Health Catalyst. I wrote this book 3 months ago after thinking about it for about 6 years. So that is available on Amazon. So
congratulations on the book launch, by the way. And I think that we probably have that information that'll be available on Glam Hive as well. So people will be able to find your resources after this. So another question is, someone asked, a while ago, a nutritionist advised my husband that unsweetened jelly was a good before bed snack. He needed to lose weight at the time. Since it's cold, would you believe that that's a healthier alternative for winter? So you kind of already addressed snacks, but I'd love for you to get into the unsweetened jelly thing, just unsweetened in general. Those terminologies can be tricky.
I don't know that I understand what the question is or what unsweetened jelly is. What do you mean by that?
The question, okay, that's a good question. I think
jelly, like a preserve that doesn't have extra sugar in it.
That question came from Raquel Macias. So maybe Raquel, if you're listening, you can send us a follow-up to that question so
Or
Avanti
she
can
can, if she's on Instagram, she can direct message me. I'm answering questions all day long in the
Oh,
DM.
great. What's your Instagram again, just so everyone knows?
It's my full name, Avanti Kumar Singh. It's just all together.
Great. So any other questions that we don't get to, feel free to reach out to Avanti there afterwards.
I'm happy to.
So Donna McCullough asks, what do you think of intermittent fasting?
So intermittent fasting comes from Ayurveda. It's a fancy term that's been, sort of coined in this country, as a lot of things end up being in the wellness world. That is part of what we do. And that's why I answered the question about eating 3 meals, 2 meals. That's based on this principle that you should not be eating all day long, all night long. There should be time for your digestion to rest, at least 12 hours. And that's why we say, your lunch should be your largest meal and your breakfast and dinner should be lighter and easier to digest. It's based on this idea. So intermittent fasting actually comes from Ayurveda. It's what I call Ayurvedic rhythmic fasting, that's where it comes from. So I absolutely believe in it. It's part of this wisdom that's 5,000 years old. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question to that though, because you mentioned these 12-hour sort of breaks for the digestive system. But I think that right now we have a lot of people promoting it in terms of, eating food for 2 days and then not eating food for 2 days, or even taking more than 24-hour breaks in between sustenance. What do you say about that? And is that just sort of like a watered down, interpretation? Because that sounds like it's different than what you just described.
Yeah, so there are different periods of fasting. There are different patterns of eating. In general, you want to give at least 12 hours. I guess let me clarify, at least 12 hours between your last meal in the evening and your first meal in the next day. Now, depending on what's going on for you, what health issues you're having, or what your goals are, you can lengthen that, right? And go anywhere from 14 to 18, 24, 36. It just depends on what's going on. In India, we fast all the time for religious and cultural reasons. And there's a reason beyond the religious and cultural. It's actually because it gives the entire body some time to rest and to reset itself. There's also a lot of physiological processes, something called autophagy, which is basically cell death and growth, that is enhanced through fasting and giving your body a break. Again, a much deeper conversation than what we have time for, but they're all correct. It just depends on why you're doing it and what's going on for you.
Okay, that's fair. So another question came in from Courtney Smith, asking if you have any suggestions for diabetics when it comes to the eating schedule and the seasonality of certain foods.
That's a hard question to answer without knowing exactly what's going on. So if you can send me a personal question, I can try and answer a little bit more on that. I think again, your body, what you respond to, and sort of your patterns. It also depends if you're a type 1 or type 2 diabetic. So it's a hard question for me to answer in this forum. So I'm sorry, I don't have enough time to get into that, but please follow up with me and I can give you some more resources to look at for that.
Okay. Courtney, follow Avanti on Instagram and send her a DM, and she would love to help you a little bit more with that one. So I have one more question from Lori Kids. Her question is, what is the best tip or tips for women entering menopause? She says that she is not struggling too badly, but starting to notice symptoms, hot flashes, breast tenderness, moodiness, etc.
So this is a great question. Again, this goes back to a basic principle in Ayurveda, which is what I call the golden principle. Like increases like and opposites reduce. I'm going to try and sum this question up really quickly. If you're having symptoms that are of menopause that are very hot, hot flashes, all of these symptoms have a lot of fire element in them. If you add things as far as foods or activities that also have a lot of heat in them, it's just going to increase your symptoms because like increases like. Again, I'm doing this really fast. So if this is not completely making sense to you, please reach out to me. So what you would need to do is actually do something opposite, because opposites reduce. So you want to add more cooling foods. So that means, limit the amount of alcohol, caffeine, sugar, red meat. Those are all things that have hot qualities to them. You shouldn't be doing hot yoga. You shouldn't be, doing tons and tons of really high intensity cardiovascular types of thing if you're having a lot of symptoms. That doesn't mean you don't do them at all, but that means you sort of look at what's going on and taper back a little bit what you're doing. If you're eating all these hot foods and doing all these hot activities all the time, your symptoms are going to go out of control. So try and balance with something. Bring some coolness into your daily activities, your food, your exercise patterns, all that kind of stuff.
That was a great answer. And I think that the menopause issue is one that obviously all women at some point will be confronting, but it's sometimes difficult to even approach that subject because there's so much taboo and stigma and unknown about it. So thank you for touching on that for us. I think that we are nearing the end of our of our discussion. I am going to check and see if we have any other questions that we can address. I think we've gotten to all of our questions. Actually, there was another question. Somebody asked with the pandemic, I think we kind of touched on this before, but just to get your thoughts one more time. With the pandemic, what should we be doing more or less of? I guess just overall is this question. It was from an anonymous attendee.
In general. I think that again, having making sure you have a routine of some kind is probably the most important thing to do. So make sure that you are waking up with the sun, trying to go to sleep at, creating boundaries on what time you're working, make sure that your meals at regular times, because basically the physiology of that is that when we know what to expect, when our bodies, our nervous systems know what to expect, the nervous system can relax and go into the parasympathetic nervous system. Stress is the biggest cause of inflammation. Inflammation is linked to pretty much every chronic illness that we have and every symptom. That's just, I'm making a sort of a general statement there. So the more that we can move ourselves into a parasympathetic state, the healthier we're going to be.
Excellent. So I think we are, that was a great answer. We have covered a lot of topics today, a lot of information, not a lot of topics, a lot of information about this topic. I think that there is a lot people can take away from this as far as, of course, learning more about Ayurveda and the practices, but also just about looking into ourselves, our routines, what we're doing, what we're eating, what's stressing us out, and trying to figure out ways to mitigate the stress and find things that can help us, as we said at the start, enhance our energy and also, increase our energy and improve our immune systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd agree 100%.
So hold on one second. I think I was waiting for us to get sort of a signal from our Glam Hive powers that be about our runtime and how we were going. I think we are nearing the end of our chat. Is Lynn or Colton on the line to give us a cue? Are you seeing anything on your end?
I'm not.
Okay, let's see here. I am not either. I mean, I think we can, oh, I lost you. There you are. Let's see here.
The Glam Hive people have, I mean, that signal is gone. I think that he would have said something. I don't think we're on anymore. I don't know.
Are we not? I see recording.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure either. Well, I did get a note that says just a few minutes left. Great job. I don't see what time that was. Well, I think that we can keep talking until someone tells us we shouldn't do that anymore. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I think there's participants, but I don't know who can see us or hear us, or I have
Me
no idea.
neither. Let's see. Me also attendee list. I am really not sure. Let's see here. We are view attendees list, I think. Well, if anyone else is still in the chat with us, will you give us a wave so we know? Oh, there you go. I see 2 waves. Okay. So
Okay.
we are still perfect. Does anyone have any questions for us that we haven't addressed yet? Let's see here.
Now there's only one person. I think that I don't know.
Not sure either. Let's see. Participants. It says, yeah, I think there's one person still here. Nadine, are you the one person that's with us still? Yes. Okay. Do you have any questions for us? Let's see. Nope. While we have a few more seconds, I think we should talk a little bit more about your book. Congratulations again on the launch of the book. So you said it's been out for 3 months?
Yeah, it came out in August, the middle of August. So I can't believe it's been 3 months. Yeah.
Just flew by. This whole year has been like just a flyby situation. It's been like a drive-by, but somewhat deadly. Where can we find your book?
You can find it on Amazon right now. So if you just type my name in, and actually I'm sure that we can do some follow-up with sending a link out, but it's called The Health Catalyst. And if you type in my name or the title of the book, it'll pop right up. So
we could certainly all use as much help as we can get right now with our health and figuring out ways to take care of ourselves. Because one of the things that I felt was really poignant once we kind of went on lockdown and started becoming more restrictive with what we were able to do is we kind of all needed to figure out how to be more health and self-sufficient, right?
Yeah. And I think that's sort of, really my perspective is that you can take this healing back into your hands. And that's really what I write about in the book. It's a very short book. It's meant to be a beginner's guide of really laying the foundation for this idea that you can take health back into your hands using the framework of Ayurveda. And I really sort of lay out the basic way that I explain it, that I've been teaching it for over 10 years now, of how to understand it and to make it more accessible. So I think that I think it's a good resource. There's lots of other books too, but that's, if you like my style of teaching and explaining things, it's pretty much like having me sitting with you, taking you through how to apply Ayurveda to your life.
I think that someone like you who has so much knowledge of both the Western medicine practices and then as well as these ancient beliefs, it makes what you do, I think, that much more special. But also the way you break everything down is very, very good for laymen such as myself, who just kind of want to be able to connect the dots without a lot of complicated jargon, for lack of another expression, because sometimes there's a lot out there that we can benefit from, but we just don't understand what it means and how to make it doable in everyday life. And I think you do a great job of breaking that down.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think at this point we are probably not still
on. I think they probably other things started.
Yeah, other seminars have probably started by now. So, well, thank you so much, Avanti, for your time and your expertise and your insight. It was great. Very much appreciated.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you and talk to you. Thanks for all the great questions. And yeah, I'm so happy.
My pleasure. And thank you to everyone who joined us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Have a great day. Great weekend.
You as well. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.